So it's amazing what one playoff meeting will do for two teams to create a rivalry. And of course, last year it was Barrie versus Oshawa in the first round. And Adam Dunfee, you're the host on Rogers TV and also fill in for radio play-by-play. So you've been seeing this team up close these last few years.
Yes, absolutely. And I actually get to make my first trip to Barrie this Saturday, filling in on the radio side. I've never actually been to the arena, so I'm very excited. But you're so right, Mike. The playoffs can do wonders for a rivalry. And boy, was that a fun series in last season's playoffs. It was a 1-8 matchup. Oshawa came into that series with that 12-game regular season winning streak, but it certainly didn't play out like a 1-8 playoff series. And I guess the big reason for that was just how brilliant Sam Hillebrand was in that series.
And for that series too, like going into it, I think for a lot of Barrie Colt fans, it was Oshawa. They're a juggernaut. They're on that 12-game winning streak. Barrie clawed their way into a playoff spot, but they made things interesting, and that kind of it almost seems as though that sparked the Generals for that push to the OHL final last year.
Oh, I think absolutely, because after they came out of that series, they go and play Ottawa in the second round. And Ottawa's a team that's had Oshawa's number for the past few seasons. The season before, it was the 67s who would knock the Generals out in 5 games in the opening round. And the Generals go in and they sweep that series against the 67s. And really, I don't think any of us who cover the team were expecting that. So I think the scare that Barrie gave them certainly added some motivation or perhaps battle hardened them a little bit for that second round series. And of course, they go on to the third round. They're up 3-0 against North Bay, but then North Bay comes back to force a game 7. So it was certainly an interesting playoffs for the Generals last season.
And we really got to see Beckett Seneca come out. He, of course, got injured, which kind of was a bit of a setback for the team, but that just went to show just how talented this young man was before being drafted in Vegas by the Anaheim Ducks.
And third overall, and we all, I think, expected that he would be a first round selection, but I don't think anyone saw him going as high as he did at third overall, including himself. Of course, there was that viral moment when the pick was announced. The look on his face was disbelief, like, wait, did they say
Right?
my name? And I think the Ducks, they actually made a t-shirt with his face on it, with that look he gave when he heard the news he was being drafted. He had some injury problems, as you alluded to, but he is back now with the Oshawa Generals and just recently had an 8-game goal streak snap. So he is certainly feeling it right now early on this season.
And usually for teams in the OHL, there's some sort of turnover. It's either players are graduating or just just that fluctuation with the way OHL hockey works. But the Generals too, a coaching change with Laxdal moving on to the American Hockey League, and now you've got O'Rourke behind the bench. Do you find that maybe the slow start was a bit of an adjustment for everybody to get used to the new systems?
I don't really think so because Steve O'Rourke was an associate head coach under Derek Laxdal, so the players knew what they were getting. So they were still preaching the same philosophies still. I just think maybe there was a bit of a hangover from last season's success. The Generals weren't a team that was expected to go that far last season. They end up going to the OHL final against the London Knights. This season was really, or is seen as really their best opportunity to make a run for a championship. You could almost say last season was a bit of a bonus. And with that, and you have so many NHL draft picks on this team, you're still waiting to get a lot of them back. You had Beckett Seneca up with the Ducks. He was injured for a good portion of that time, but still away from the club. You had Cal Richie, who started the season in the NHL, scored his first NHL goal before being returned for the Colorado Avalanche. You had Ben Danford, the captain, who was at Maple Leafs camp. Unfortunately, he also got injured, but he now is back. And Luca Morelli, they got him back pretty early on. And of course, he's been off to a great start this season. But I think really it was just waiting for everyone to get back and then really starting to gel. But to their credit, the players never used the excuse of waiting for reinforcements to come back to excuse the early season struggles.
And you touched on how coming into this year, Oshawa was viewed as one of the top contenders in the Eastern Conference. And, we're also hearing the likes of the Brampton Steelheads, the Bulldogs, even the Barrie Colts. They should be some of the top teams. But we've seen some movement. We saw Rakoff go to the Brampton Steelheads, Bertucci came to Barrie. And then Oshawa, the big splash with Colby Barlow. How is that all fitting so far for this team?
It's taken Barlow a little bit to get going. He has started to find the back of the net with some regularity now, but I still think there is more of a ceiling for his impact for this team. Of course, he's a two-time 40 goal scorer in the OHL. Last season, hit the 40 goal mark, only playing 50 games. But of course, now there's a lot of other weapons on this team, goal scoring weapons. So I still think there is more to see from Colby Barlow, and he does lead this team in shots, so he is still getting his shots in on goal. And but I think if the Generals really start to see that production tick up a little more, then it's going to be, just another really scary weapon that they can throw out there.
Well, that's just it. There seems to be a variety of weapons this team can choose from. And Cal Richie, since coming back from the Avalanche, the team's only suffered one loss since he's been in the lineup. Talk about how important of a player Cal Richie is to this organization.
Well, Cal Richie just really gives the offense that extra oomph. So through the first 7 games he's been back from the NHL, he has a point in all 7 of those games, and he kicked it off. His first game back was in Kingston, picked up a casual 2 assists in his season debut there. So the first 2 games that Richie was back in the lineup for the Oshawa Generals, they put up 14 goals in a pair of 7-goal games. And I believe in the next 2 games, they scored 5 apiece in those games. So you had 24 goals in 4 games with Callum Richie back in the lineup. So that worked out to us average of 6 goals per game. And I'm not some sort of math savant. I had that stat lying here
Oh,
because
good.
I do struggle with numbers. I'm glad there's no camera whenever I'm up in the booth because you just see me doing this with my hands to try and keep track of things. But of course, scoring 6 goals per game isn't sustainable, but it just gives you a nice look into just what Cal Ritchie does do to this offense. He's sort of like a turbocharger for it.
And last year too, Jacob Oster had an amazing year in the crease. He was OHL goaltender of the year, and I feel as though this season we're focusing so much on the offense that we don't really give much credit to the play of the goaltenders because they're still playing quite well here this season.
Well, especially early on in the season when the Generals were struggling, Oster still gave them a good chance to win every night. And that's just what you've come to expect if you watch the Oshawa Generals. Seeing Jacob Oster over the seasons, he has been with the club and he's just consistent. And now he's an overager. And as you said, he's coming off that OHL Goaltender of the Year award last season. So you know what you get with Jacob Oster. He's going to provide steady goaltending. And what's also been nice for the Generals is early on in the season, they've gotten Isaac Gravel, the backup now, infirmed or entrenched backup after Noah Bender was sent to Flint. Gravel's now 3-0 to start his OHL career. So it also, gives some confidence to the coaching staff where, maybe you don't have to overplay Oster, save him, give him a chance to be a little fresher come playoff time.
And since now we're past the quarter mark of the regular season, when you look at the road ahead for Oshawa, that East Division right now, Kingston, surprising many right now, sitting atop of the East. Do you view Kingston as that team that is going to be quite the challenge for Oshawa through the season?
That's a very good question because they've seen Kingston a lot. They've played them 3 times already. The Gens have the edge of the season series 2-1. They've been the last time they matched up, it was a 2-1 Kingston win. It was a very tight checking game. I still I look at Brantford still. I know they haven't been off to a great start, but they just have so many weapons. If their power play can get going, I mean, it really struggled to start the season. I still see them as a threat, not to discount Kingston because that's why they play the games, right? You
Yeah.
can see one thing on paper, then on the ice it's completely different. And North Bay, oh, excuse me, I'm just looking at the conference overall. The way I still see Brantford as a threat for them. Yeah, Kingston, if they can continue to play the way they're playing, obviously, and yeah, Ottawa always, without the exception of last season's playoffs, Ottawa always seems to give the Generals trouble. Their first matchup of the season, it was an Ottawa win as well, so I can never count out the 67s either when they match up against the Generals. And do they come back and haunt them again overall in a hunt for an East Division title?
Well, that's the great thing about junior hockey. It can be so unpredictable at times. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. And this weekend, it should be a classic matchup between Barrie and Oshawa back at the Saddleland Arena.
Oh, looking forward to it. These teams, of course, Barrie has the early edge in the season series with their victory in Oshawa. So another good game like we saw in last season's playoffs. So really looking forward to this matchup Saturday.
Well, Adam, thanks for doing this. And we'll see you, I guess, at the Saddleland Arena this weekend.
See you there, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So that's Oshawa Generals TV host Adam Dunfee, and I guess we could also say part-time play-by-play voice as he's filling in on the radio for this weekend as the Generals get ready for a 3-3 starts in Ottawa Friday night before they travel to Barrie on Saturday. And you can catch the game on Saturday on Rogers TV. Gina and I will have the call. Puck drop is at 7:30, and boy oh boy, these games between Barrie and Oshawa this season should be something else. As like we mentioned in the interview there, these two teams, they met in the first round of the playoffs last year, and the Barrie Colts raised a lot of eyebrows, forcing the number one seed Generals to a game six. And you got to figure that intensity will linger as they get ready for their second meeting of the season. So thank you very much for tuning in and all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you again soon.